There has always been an unrelenting pull to the dark side for humankind. Without darkness, there can be no light after all. And without Doom, a dark game all in its own right, there would be no first-person shooters. This started the craze that still runs today with the FPS genre. IDTECH started it all way back in 1993, some 27 years ago now. But then time and tide waits for no one, and in 2020, the year of our Lord, the Archangel returns to slay all that trespass, to drive thine GPU to maximum and slay thine CPU within an inch of its life, to rip and tear your world asunder. Doom is back. Doom is truth. Doom is eternal. With my full performance video up already that covers the top and tail console versions of this latest Road to Hell title, here in my long running attention to detail series I instead concentrate on the engine upgrades IDTECH 7 brings and how well stacked the new sequel to 2016's monstrous rebirth of Doom is, and just what makes this the pinnacle of technical proficiency of the current generation. Starting with a tale of Iron Maiden meets Slayer, Doomslayer that is. Let's start with the story. It effectively means you go rip and tear asunder to save Earth from the demonic overlords that have taken it over. I can't detail too much of the story because it's a Doom title. It's hardly strong on story, and if I try and ruin it by telling you what it does, then it might take away some of the surprises the game offers. Know this, everything's gone to hell, you're the Slayer, you sort it out. You can fill in the gaps in between. The story is as you expect, minimal, but it drives you forward on each of the incoming sections, and those sections play out very similar to Doom of old and Doom of 2016. You walk into an area, it closes itself off for a short period of time, or you get trapped in there, and then hordes and swarms of enemies come in to take you apart, which obviously doesn't go well for them. This repeats until Fade. Alongside this you get the exploration, the puzzles, and there's a lot more of that, and it's actually quite challenging at points. I like the fact that it doesn't lead you by its hand. A lot of common games nowadays do that and I hate it. This really has a marker, or you can turn that off like I did and just play the game without it majority of the time, and that makes for a far more engaging experience because then the puzzles and the path actually adds a little bit more fun. The story is more involved and it has some excellent moments throughout the campaign, but it never distracts and gets in the way of the core aspect of the game, of all games really, and that is the gameplay. You will enjoy it, you will love it, and performance is exceptional on console. Much of the footage here comes from the Xbox One X and obviously the PC, but the Xbox One S is identical to that except for the fact that it has a lower resolution. An example of the Xbox One S, as you can see it on screen right now, it's still a gorgeous looking game. The improvement of the texture quality and the materials vastly improved from the mega textures, which is still a virtual texturing solution. I know people will get confused. That is just a common trend, but it doesn't mean that it's trying to bake everything to the textures, which is what mega textures were really for, and trying to use the hard drive to minimize the amount of RAM required by streaming that in within the bitmap chain as needed. The engine still uses that. Most engines use that nowadays, but they've moved away from mega textures, so they still gain the benefits of using a virtualized texture solution, therefore minimizing the amount of RAM footprint they need, but remove that error of the bitmap chain coming in very late and therefore giving you muddy, smeared textures. It does happen occasionally, but it's like every other game out there at the moment. It's nothing like it used to be, and even at times on Doom 2016 they have fully resolved that issue. And again, the Xbox One S is a cracking looking title, so don't think you're missing out on all the beauties that IDTECH 7 delivers here, and certainly you're benefiting from the huge technical improvements and those performance ones. It is better than 2016. Spoiler alert there if you haven't watched my analysis video just yet. Now, be it on PC or console, one of the biggest areas of game and software development as a whole is the API or drivers that the game creators need to use as the translator for the hardware they need to instruct. The lower the abstraction they have on the hardware, i.e. direct control of its functions and methods, then the greater the scope within the engine, the artists, the animators, and obviously the overall game design. Doom was the first and largely still biggest game and engine to go open source for the community. This is why why it really has endured and can be pretty much run on any device, and does run on any device, like the full game engine version of Hello World in fact. Now with Quake, the team embraced hardware acceleration and the emerging OpenGL format that was a forerunner to DirectX, something that id have never supported. Now with Doom Eternal and earlier in Wolfenstein 2, they dropped support for OpenGL and went full on with Vulkan, very much like they did back in the 90s with OpenGL in Quake 3. Now this enables the team to focus the API calls, the engine methods and overall rendering solution to be focused on one format. Similar to console development, but not the same, mind, which reduces the branching paths and legacy support a dual render path brings. Now this also reduces the executable size significantly, as you can remove all of those lines, classes and methods related to OpenGL, which lowers both install size and complexity. Internal is now 36GB installed on PC, with Doom 2016 being almost twice that size. Now the biggest benefit from this is in performance, as the team can focus on using the options Vulkan has over OpenGL. A big leap in performance here comes from the team now pushing much harder on asynchronous compute work, breaking the engine and rendering load over multiple frames. Up to 50% of the frame is now running across 2 frames or more at once to improve the hardware use, reduce stalls and add more within the same space. The net product of this is performance, now even better than the already stunning 2016 version, which you can check out in my console analysis as mentioned. Now on PC this gives the option to push above 60, even 120 FPS with the same maximum as Wolf 2 of 1000 FPS. An entire frame every 1 millisecond is an incredible achievement, and above all else validates that under the command of Thiago Souza, Billy Khan and the rest of the engine team, the IDTECH are still right at the sharp end of game development, and they are really pushing engines and games that will perform much better on the next generation of hardware, including PC and console, to just push closer to that 1000 FPS as a reality. Slow down be damned. The visual treat is also accompanied by an audio one. That superb Mick Gordon soundtrack is here yet again, and it really ramps up the energy and the atmosphere as you walk into a scene knowing it's all going to kick off, or you walk into a cutscene getting prepped for a big boss battle. It does that over and over again. There aren't as many great tunes as there was in the last one, I feel, and there's a lot of repetitive points in the title when you're playing long sections where you hear the same music over and over again, but it's still very good and very consistent. If you don't like it, then you clearly don't like Doom or rock music. But the game and the sound effects overall, the dialogue, the acting, the meaty punches as you smash somebody in the face, rip their arms off, stick it in their face, blow them up, explosions and gore, everything just ramps up the audio and pyrotechnic effects throughout the title, that you're left with a treat on both your eyes and your ears, and you really need to turn that volume up to max when you're getting stuck into the meat. But all of this improvement to throughput and performance has not come at the expense of graphical and animation flair though. We still see the same and improved PBR based material shaders across the varied enemy hordes, and much greater scope and scale of the levels and combat arenas where you lay your smack down. One of the intelligent bandwidth and artistic design decisions taken here from IDTECH 6 and now 7 has been the lower frequency material system in the games, combined with the specular, normal and base colour composites to accentuate the desired aesthetic. This, combined with their abundant colour corrected tone mapping, presents many of the titles, specifically Doom, an overwhelming hue that carries each segment and design and mood that the artist has. Now Doom 2016 used burnt oranges of the Steel Foundry or reds of Mars to the dark blues of the industrial segment. Here in Eternal they have expanded the palette and reduced the tonal shifts to enable a more pleasing and brighter spectrum across section to section and certainly level to level. Now you have a much brighter tone across each level and cleaner IQ than before. The post-processing is slightly toned down to give a clearer view. Chromatic aberration, film grain and even FOV can all be adjusted on console, but of course you can go all custom on PC to get the look, feel and speed your hardware can muster. And this includes HDR, a superb implementation of HDR. It covers that, the engine supports that now fully across all versions, both HDR lighting materials and shadows, which brings a great look and feel to the screen when you're playing it on an appropriate set. The only console that doesn't support it obviously is the base Xbox One, but my S does here, and it works just as well as that as it does on PC and the X.
I told you all to leave me here. I am where I belong. Saving your people will not bring you peace, only make the burden you carry worse.
And this is where we see some big improvements over the best the console space has to offer in the Xbox One X. On the PC, with the appropriate hardware, then texture detail, material quality, filtering and lighting precision are some of the most obvious. Look at the extra normal maps, the higher surface texture resolution and overall clarity the PC version has here to the X. Now, the 8GB of dedicated RAM on both my 2070 and my 5500 XT enable the engine to render more high-frequency details and push them through an even wider pipe. It also shows off some of the higher precision on the game's GI system, Global Illumination, which is delivered via light maps across the variety of levels you have to battle through. The solution it presents on all formats and complements the exemplary screen space reflections and specular light composites that are used consistently in the game to give metallic objects, water surfaces and other areas that bounce of both light and objects, just adding more intensity and vibrancy to the scene, whilst also making everything look a lot more realistic. These also enable artistic flourishes such as water caustic reflections from light refraction. Although hand placed by the artist at certain sections, nevertheless they only really enhance what is already a very impressively illuminated title and can at many points exceed the quality seen in games that run at half the frame rate. Be mindful though that the game does demand more hardware at the same menu setting than Doom 2016, as they have rightly used their improvements to cram more into the same footprint, like a Slayer fist into your face. Now, the design and colour tone has also been altered with a brighter look, higher red hues and getting closer overall to the original Doom palette. It's still dark, but now Hell has a slight area of hope about it that allows you to appreciate more of the detail and skill contained within the artistic objects and the characters throughout the title. One such area of improvement is the game's exquisite use of animation, leaping up from 16. It's actually quite immense. We have far more variety of enemies both across the entire game and resident in memory at once within battles. In addition, they have significantly increased the animation touches, glory kill variety, movement, dynamic reactions and reloads in the game. From the way the Slayer secures a new weapon with a romantic observation before putting it to good use, or the reacquaintance of his chainsaw like Ash coming home.
Groovy.
The fast and fluid action can at times mean you miss just how much love, care and attention has been spent on these moments, along with the diversity it contains. Kill an enemy from behind or from the front or even the side will change that kill, along with actually using your weapon to lower their weakness and then going in for the glory kill. It all changes and adds a higher level of strategy within the heavy combat sections, as you have to deal with more types of enemies at once. Another huge area of embellishment within the engine now and the game is that enemy deformation and destruction system. Huge chunks of flesh can be stripped off of them as you blast, smack, kick and tear across your redemption path. Arms can be reduced to meat straddled bones, rib cages are exposed, eyes ripped from their sockets and even completely disemboweled before you rip everything asunder. This is mostly a cosmetic improvement, but one that is both visceral in nature and rewarding in execution, as it only raises the feeling of fear and doom you are putting on these hordes in front of you. Alongside the slow but steady increase of your arsenal that just raises the choice and variety, it all combines into the most satisfying, skill-focused and rewarding combat system in modern games. Once you have your dual shotgun and meat chain, you can mix up combination and weapon swaps, cutting a gory but glory-filled path across the terrain. Something further bolstered by the decal system that will leave claret splattering on walls or floors that only an abattoir usually sees. Everything about this title is graced with love, affection and care, and the improvements to both the design, the artistic size and obviously the improvements to the engine to actually render far more geometry and therefore bigger areas to combat in and more destruction just means that you feel more chaotic and more bombastic whenever you get into sections just like this. To supplement everything that I've talked about, Doom Eternal is really the high point of the IDTECH engine. The team should be rightly proud not on the amount that they've crammed into the game, but also the amount of passion, care and attention they've put on every little piece. All of the areas I've talked about look superb. They make the game feel incredible, and the open areas and the long level of almost Metrovania style traversal at times really adds a different flair to the game and breaks up the combat, exploration and puzzle sections perfectly. But what really shines in this attention to detail analysis is just how hard they are pushing every single piece of hardware on, no matter what it runs on, both the CPU, the GPU, the RAM, the hard drive. Nothing is left to idle at any point to get the maximum out of it and deliver you the best experience. Back in 1993, Doom pushed the technical envelope of 3D games and performance, and Doom Eternal is absolutely no different. It looks superb, it plays superb, and it utilises hardware right now and will still push hardware in the foreseeable future. 4K, 8K, 120 frames, 1000 frames per second, that's still a long way off in terms of performance. But you can be sure once it becomes a reality, Doom will eternally be pushing the envelope. This is not only the most performant title I've ever seen on any piece of hardware so far, it's also possibly one of the best games IDTECH have ever made. Nothing about this game is bad, unless of course you don't like Doom, you don't like combat and you don't like gore. If you don't, then probably go and check out Animal Crossing. It's probably a better bet anyway. And that's it for my attention to detail analysis. I hope you enjoyed it and everything I've put together on this channel. If you like what I do and everything else that I'm intending to do, then please like, share and all that jazz. That helps me out immensely. I appreciate each and every one of you that watches, and I'll catch you all very soon on the next one.
They are no longer your people to save.